What's going on, everybody? We've got a great show for you today. As always, brought to you by Black Rifle Coffee. You can go to Black Rifle Coffee, put in the code BLASTOFF25. You will get 25% off your first month in the coffee club and lots of other items on the site. And my favorite right now is the Liberty Roast. It's so good, man. I love that. So if they still have that, check that out. Today's guest is pro bass fisherman Brent Ehrler. And Brent and I met at a Mercury event a long time ago. I thought he was really cool. We got along great. He's a bass fisherman from California, and recently he's been putting on a lot of stuff on his social media about diet and fitness and how that's affected his fishing. So I thought that would be interesting. But we have a great conversation about diet and fitness. And then we talk a lot about bass fishing, his experience on the different tours, what he's been able to accomplish, who he's fished up against. And I hope you'll stick around for this great conversation with Mercury Pro, Power Pole Pro, Daiwa Pro, and many other. Lucky Craft, he's with Lucky Craft. Brent Ehrler.
Hey everyone, I am Brent Ehrler, and this is the Tom Rowland Podcast.
Brent, what's going on? How are you, man?
Doing great. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, I've been wanting to have you on for a long time. We're on the Mercury Pro team together. We're on the Daiwa Pro team together, probably a couple others. And really always wanted to have you on the podcast. You're a pro bass fisherman, obviously doing extremely well in that. Been doing it for how long? How long have you been doing that?
Oh, man, I've been doing it full time now. I think I've done 16 full seasons.
Wow, that's incredible.
It's
We're going to get into
back on it.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure it is. And your home's California?
Yes, I live in Redlands, California. I'm kind of in between Los Angeles and Palm Springs.
Okay, very cool. Well, I'm very interested to see how this all got started. But first, we're going to put you on the hot seat. We got 1 minute. It's going to take 1 minute. We're going to see how many of these questions that we can get through. We'll start at 2:20 on my clock here, which is in just a second here. So I'm just going to run through these questions. You go through them as fast as you can. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Sunrise or sunset?
Sunrise.
Text or call?
Text.
Drive or fly?
Drive.
East Coast or West Coast?
West Coast.
Largemouth or smallmouth?
Largemouth.
Spin or bait caster?
Spin casting. Spin.
Whoa, okay, cool.
Jeez.
Favorite state to bass fish?
Texas.
Winter Olympics or Summer Olympics?
Winter, for sure.
Instagram or Twitter?
Instagram.
Mountain bike or snowboard?
Mountain bike, for sure.
Chocolate or vanilla?
Chocolate.
Coffee, tea, or energy drink?
Coffee, 100%.
Audiobook, Kindle, or paper?
Audio.
Movie that makes you laugh?
Old school.
Me too. What do you listen to on long drives?
Joe Rogan podcasts.
Country, rock, or rap?
Country and rap. Country rap, I guess. I'm not a rock guy.
Okay, I like it. You made it through 16. That's probably a new record. I shortened a couple of them. All right, so these are the questions that we're starting to ask everybody. The best advice you've ever been given, if you can remember that.
My dad is always big on, he calls it the 6 Ps. Proper preparation prevents piss poor performance. And I'm one of those kids that, my dad was a tough guy, and I don't like to give him credit, but man, he was right on a lot of things. So, being prepared for stuff and over preparing is a big deal. I use that a lot in fishing. It comes down to hoping for the best, but preparing for the worst. You always have to be prepared.
That's cool. And the 6 Ps will definitely come in handy in fishing for sure. That's my experience anyway. All right, 3 non-negotiables that you have in your life.
Oh man, non-negotiables. I've never been asked that question. I've never really, thought about that. Family, my wife, Kelly, and my son, Ollie, I mean, they're a huge part of my life. We have a great little family, just the one son, but, they're a big deal. So that's something that I would never compromise.
Okay. Awesome. That's one. What about 2 others?
2 others. Non-negotiables, man. Right now, diet. I'm really big on a healthy diet. My cheating on my diet is I've had, rice kind of here and there. I've had mashed potatoes here and there. When I say here and there, probably in the last year, it's been less than 6 bowls of rice and probably 3 bowls of mashed potatoes.
Wow.
So right now, I've been really strict on my diet. I'm full gas on everything. If I, I'm not the person that can kind of, just cheat a little bit here and there. Once I start cheating, it's full gas. So I'm kind of full
Hmm.
gas in every direction. So diet's one, and then exercise is another one right now. I do push-ups every day. Even days where if I go to the gym and I'm going to do a chest exercise, I still do push-ups at my house. So diet's one, exercise is the other right now.
That's fantastic. And another reason why I wanted to have you on the podcast, obviously. But in the world of fishing, not everybody takes as good a care of themselves as that. Is the diet thing that you're doing over the last couple of years, is that out of necessity? I mean, you've always been kind of a fit guy, and from when I've known you. But it seems like in the last couple of years, you've really taken it to another level. Is it helping your performance on the water? Like, is that one of the things that's going on?
It does for sure. It helps you in every aspect of life. It's if you're physically fatigued, you're going to be mentally fatigued. So I think that if you're physically fit, you're going to make better decisions. You're going to have a little bit more mental clarity than if I'm telling you, if you're physically fatigued, you can't make the right decisions. And fishing, it's just fishing. It's really not that big of a deal. I look at some of the guys that beat me daily or will beat me out there, and I mean they couldn't even walk a mile, let alone jog and do push-ups. So it's not the end all be all to be a good fisherman, but for me, I feel like it helps give me that drive to hopefully compete against the guys. So I felt stronger this season than I have in any other season. And it's diet and exercise is that reason why.
Tell me about your annual schedule. Like, how many days are you on the road? What's the, for an elite bass guy, which tours are you doing for an elite bass guy? What is, like we're just talking about, like the physical requirements of being able to do this for 16 seasons. Just for people that kind of are familiar with bass fishing but not intimately. What does that look like?
It's so being from the West Coast, from California, I start the season by driving from California to my first event, and almost every season will start in Florida because in February, that is the start of the season. So you can't really go to certain parts of the country in February, so there's a really good chance you're going to have good weather in Florida. So I'll drive from my house in Southern California to Florida. I'll fish that event, and then I will drive to the next event or drive somewhere in between, leave the boat and truck, and then I'll fly home and then fly back and start that whole scenario over again. Each tournament is about 10 days long from when I fly out. I usually get there, I fly out 2 days prior to practice starting. So I have one day to get all my tackle ready, get the boat ready, gas up the boat, go to the market, get groceries for the week. I'll also meal prep on that day before. And then we have 2 days of practice that we're allowed to scout around the lake. So I try to maximize my time. I know guys out there that, like, let's say if it's lines in the morning at 7 a.m., they won't get on the water until 7 a.m. And it'll be lines out at 4 p.m., meaning we can't, that's when it's the stop time.
Mm-hmm.
They'll stop fishing at 4 because they think that if they find anything after 4 o'clock, that it's not going to help them later, in the tournament. So I don't understand why guys do that. Guys come in early, they hang out, they drink, and they eat, and they do the whole thing. And for me, it's dark to dark. I am on the water when we are allowed to be on the water, and I'm off the water when we are supposed to be off the water because
So
I'm
you
trying to
can't
maximize.
fish, but you can map the lake, and you can look around and do other things like that. What is that? What the rules say?
We're allowed to fish, so we go out and fish, and we try to find where we want to, spend our time in the tournament. The
But from
only
seven to
rule we have,
four, right?
what's that?
7 to 4, 7 to 4.
Sorry, in the tournament, it's 7 to 4, meaning that
Oh,
we'll take off at 6:30. It's a new format. So I fish Major League Fishing, the Bass Pro Tour, and the way we have it is in the past, most of our tournaments is they call your name you run out and you're on the clock right then and there. So if you wanted to stop and fish right there at takeoff, you could do that. If you're going to run an hour and a half, 70, 80 miles to get to your spot, you've wasted 70 or 80 miles of fishing time to get there.
Right.
But the way it works in our format now, we have a 30-minute runaround period at the start of the day. So we take off. They call our numbers. They call my name at 7:30. Based in on the floor. It's a random draw. So boat number one. Let's say if I'm boat number one, I'm the first guy they call, and I take off and I run to where I want to fish. But I have 30 minutes. So if I'm only running 5 minutes, that means I sit there and wait for 25 minutes before I can start fishing. Because at 8 o'clock is when, or 7 o'clock, whatever the time is, that is lines in. And I have an official in the boat that has a official scoreboard, which is an iPad with the times, our weights, everything. So we'll run out to a spot and I'll sit there and wait. And he says, okay, 2 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds, 15. And he'll give me a countdown, 10, 9, 8. And then as lines went in and I start fishing. And we have 3 2.5-hour periods. And in between those periods, we have a 15-minute period break. And the reason why they do this stuff is that they have 10 cameras on 10 camera boats throughout the lake. And they run those cameras to different people. So if I didn't start with a camera, if I'm doing well in the tournament, they'll bring out a cameraman to me. So I might start the day with the camera or not start the day. And if I start doing well, whoop, here comes a boat and they bring a cameraman to me. Next thing I know, I'm on live, web and app and everything of me fishing in the actual tournament. And we do that throughout the day. We get to the end of the period, end of the third period, and it's the same thing. You have 2 minutes left, 1 minute, 30 seconds, 10, 9, 8, whoop, lines out, no longer fishing. That's usually at 4 o'clock. So the neat thing about that is that, if you're fishing a long ways away, I mean, I've done it where I've run 100 miles in one direction. And you have to worry about that run period coming back. So if you're running 100 miles, you're only going to fish for probably 2 or 3 hours. But the whole time you're fishing, you are worried about, well, how bad's that wind? Is it going to take me longer to get home? You never know, and you can't speed up. If you're going 100 miles, there's no way you're going to get there faster than you're going to get there. There's nothing you can do. The boat's only going to go so fast. I have a Ranger boat with a 250 Mercury on it, and it tops out at 68, 70 miles an hour. So there's no way I can get there faster. And believe me, I tried. There's so many times where I've, worried I was going to be late. And I have a hot foot. TH Marine makes one of those hot foots. So it's like driving a car. And I push that thing down as hard as I possibly can, thinking that I'm going to get going a little faster. And you never do. But, so our format is different now. When it's lines out, it's lines out. I can cruise in as fast or as slow as I want. If it's rough, I can take my time. So it's kind of a neat format. The other thing, too, is that we don't have weigh-ins anymore. We don't keep the fish in the boat, keep them alive, release the smaller ones when we catch bigger ones. This is a catch, weigh, and release. So that's why that official is there. I catch a fish, he weighs it, tells me the weight, then he punches it into the scoreboard. So I know exactly where I'm at all times of the day. I could be in last place, I could be in first place, and I know that's the actual leaderboard. It's not a estimated, it's a true leaderboard. So at all times where you stand in the tournament.
You can catch as many fish and be credited for as many fish as possible in this format, right?
It used to be. That's how we started. Every fish counted. We have gone away from that now. We are on a 5 fish limit. So we're only counted on our 5 heaviest, but we still catch, weigh, and release.
And so then that iPad will just shuffle those for you and call out the ones and automatically you don't have to select. Like that was a big difference in, my experience with this is just the redfish tournaments. We did the redfish tournaments. It was 2 fish limit, not a 5 fish limit, but still you would have to call and you could get an inaccurate weight, or you could, I don't know. We had like a balance beam, right? Which I found was the easiest because I didn't want to do math out there. I just want to see which one was heavier than the other. And so I found that the balance beam, really was the best for us. But that had to really change strategy. Like when you change into this other format now how many years did you do a previous format or a previous tour before you did MLF?
So I did 10 years at FLW. which was all weigh-ins, and then I did I think 4 or 5 years with the Bass Elites, Bassmaster,
Mm-hmm.
and then now I think I'm on my 5th season with Major League Fishing. So
So
um,
it's interesting to think about. Like, I wonder which one you like best and why.
um, it's hard to say. There's things I like about all the different formats. So um, you know, I like the fact that at the end of the day, I don't have to rush to come in, meaning that,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to worry about that
Safety issue too.
running
I
time
mean,
and safety. Yeah, it's everything, and you beat up your equipment, and the biggest run I did is I had a FLW tournament out of Sandusky, Ohio, and I was running all the way up to the north end of Lake St. Clair, which meant that I was on the south end of Lake Erie, and I had to run across Lake Erie, get into the Detroit River, run up the Detroit River, get into Lake St. Clair. So uh, from Sandusky to the mouth of the Detroit River was 55 miles. I want to say it's 30 miles from there to St. Clair, and then I was running another 20, 30 miles once I got into St. Clair. So
were you
it
going
was
through the
over 100
locks?
miles, going where I was going, and I had to be back at a certain time. So, I didn't, it was tough to judge. Now, when you're running across Lake Erie, if that wind comes up, you can be instantly in 4 or 5 footers. And when
Mm-hmm.
you're in a little flat bottom bass boat, it really slows you down and can beat you up. So it just beats up your equipment, it beats up your body. I mean, I was so sore after that for running because I'd run for 2.5 hours each way just to go and fish for 2 hours and turn around and come back 2.5 hours. It was miserable. And
Two and a
my
half
body
hours
hurt.
wide open, or as fast as you could possibly go with the conditions, right? Like,
Oh, yeah, as fast as you can go. And the final day, I came back, and when I made that turn in Lake Erie, heading back to Sandusky, at that point it was 55 miles from there across. I say open ocean. I mean, it's across
well, it
Lake Erie.
looks like the ocean. I mean, when you see that on TV, I've never been on the Great Lakes, but you look at that, and it looks like the ocean.
It
I
does.
mean,
You can't see
rough,
land in any direction. So,
right?
you're out there in the middle of nowhere, and that wind was running, and I thought I had a chance at making the final day cut, and so I pushed it even more. I thought I was going to be late, and I pushed it and pushed. I pushed that boat to the limits, and I thought I was going to be late. I actually made it in with about 20 minutes to spare. But when I made that turn out of the Detroit River, just as I was getting into Lake Erie, I was 50 miles away, and I told myself I was going to be late. It was just, and there's nothing you can do about it. And it was a miserable ride. I mean, my body hurt for days just beating myself up running into to
Yeah,
do that.
you're
So
used to it. Imagine what the cameraman felt like.
I know, yeah. Fortunately, I didn't have a cameraman in the boat, but
Oh, good.
oh, it would have been miserable if there was. He would have been. I
Oh
mean, we
man.
were all sore. I had an observer with me. At the time we didn't have co-anglers, but we had an observer, and we got back in and we got to the buoy line, and he goes, "I will never ever ride in a boat with you ever again." I beat him up, getting back in time.
Man.
So, um,
But everything in that format, everything rides on that. You could have the 5 winning fish. You show up 1 minute late, it's like you never even went out there.
correct. Yeah, I think that back in the day, I want to say it was a pound a minute up to
Mm.
a certain amount. If you were over 5 minutes late, then your whole weight was disqualified. But up until that, you could be, shoot, if you were 30 seconds late, you lost a pound. It's a pound a minute. So, um, fortunately, I have not been late. I've been really close a few times, but with the format we have now, it's nice because when it's lines out, it's lines out. You get to stop right where you're at.
Yeah.
You reel your bait in, you set it on the deck, and you just pull the trolling motor, and you just kind of cruise in at your own pace.
Yeah. Do you have to, when you're doing a run like that one that you just described, do you go through locks?
I have that one there. We did not, but I have run a lot of locks.
Yeah.
I've done locks on the White River. Sorry, not the White River. Tennessee River from Lake Wheeler, from Lake Wheeler up to Lake Gunnersville, and I want to say that's a
Hmm.
50, 60 foot elevation change going from the one up to the other one. So it takes a long time. I also fished in Pittsburgh in the Three Rivers right there in downtown Pittsburgh. And I think that I was going through 4 or 5 locks to get to where I want to go. They were smaller locks, but you still had to go through 4 or 5 of them. So
Yeah,
I've
and you just
definitely done
hope
that.
that the guy's going to be there. I mean, when we were fishing in Louisiana, we had to experience. I mean, I've been through locks. I grew up in Tennessee, so we would go through the locks all the time. But you're not on a schedule. Like you're
Yeah.
not. Yeah, if the guy's not there, you got to wait a few minutes. It's not a big deal if you're just water skiing out for the day or whatever. But if you got the winning fish, and you're going by the minute, and you show up and there's like a barge going through there or something, that seems
Yeah.
like something that could be out of your control. That would be a huge stress for me. Like
It
to
is, and with the people listening to this, barges take priority. So if there's a barge that shows up and they want to go through the lock, it doesn't matter if you're in a tournament, nothing matters except for that lock. So if that
wow.
barge is there, you just lost your entire day just based on that one barge being there. So it's very risky doing that.
Hmm. So of the three, tours that we talked about, different formats, different schedules, is there one that you feel your skill set lends itself to better than others? Because when you change the rules of anything, I mean, you change the strategy of that tournament. I just wonder how, like in your decision to fish this one, is that because you feel like your skills lend itself better to this one, or is there other reasons why you would pick one over another?
Gotcha. So for me, I started fishing FLW. That was the first place that I fished and fished the national circuit, the FLW tour. Um, I did that for, I want to say it was close to 10 years. And, the whole time I was there, the names that I grew up watching, listening to, reading about were all fishing on the Bass Elites. Guys like Kevin Van Dam, people like that were over on the Bass Elites, and I wasn't there. And I was, doing well on the FLW side, but I didn't feel like I was fishing against those guys. I always say that to be the best, you have to beat the best. And I just felt like I wasn't fishing against the top tier fishermen. So because of that, I, tried to qualify for the Bass Elites, and I qualified, and then now I started fishing with those guys. Well, during that process, I was invited to do the Major League Fishing format. It was a brand new format. There was only 24 of us, and it was a catch, weigh, and release format, and every fish counted. And it was kind of changing the bass fishing scene, but they were standalone tournaments. We were only doing 2 a year. So now I was fishing on the elite side. I was fishing against the guys that, I grew up reading about. And then we were doing the standalone event. Well, they started having a lot of success. So then they started their own format, the Bass Pro Tour. They started their own national league. Well, when they did that, they invited, 80 guys from the Bass Elites to go over there and fish the Major League Fishing Bass Pro Tour. So it was a really tough decision. Bass is such a great organization. They, the Bassmaster Classic, I mean, they really made a lot of careers out there. They're a great organization. And it was, awesome for me to be a part of them. But at the same time, all the guys were leaving. So it was one of those things where, again, I felt like to beat the best, to be the best, I had to beat the best. So, I kind of, based on, my feeling of who I wanted to compete against, I didn't really have a choice on what I was going to
Mm-hmm.
do. So I went over and fished the Bass Pro Tour that was part of Major League Fishing. So it wasn't a format change that was something that I wanted to do. It was the anglers that I was fishing against. That's kind of what I did. Now, all the leagues out there, FLW is now under the Major League Fishing umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
The Bass Pro Tour, Major League Fishing bought FLW. So they have the Big Five Invitationals. There's some great fishermen there. The Bass Elites are still the Bass Elites. They have some great fishermen over there. So right now, all the tours out there have the really good fishermen that are fishing. So I just where I was at the time, it was one of those things where I had to fish against those guys that I always read about and watched on TV, and I just felt like in order for me to feel like I was at the top of my game, I had to be fishing against the top of the game.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you've definitely found yourself right in the mix there for sure. So I kind of interrupted you a little bit because you were talking about your first leg is heading to Florida. So you drive all the way across the country and start
Mhm.
fishing in Florida, and then like how long does that last? Where do you go from there? And like how many days are you spending away from home?
Usually when I have to drive, it's more than 10 days because it takes me 3 days to get to Florida. So it'll be a good 5, 6 days before I even start fishing, prior to that tournament. So I'll drive 3, I'll have 2 to prep and get ready once I get there. And then I'll practice for 2 days. And then the way our format works is that we have half the field fish one day and the other half fish the other day. So
Mm.
I'll compete one day, I'll have an off day, I'll compete again. And if I advance, then I'll go to that next round. So once I'm at the event, I'll be there for 10 days. So, if I'm driving for, 3 plus those 10, I'm gone for essentially 2 weeks just for that event.
Yeah.
And then I'll have a day drive, or a half day drive to get to the next event or wherever I'm going to leave my rig, park it, fly home. So the very first event, I'll end up being gone for about, a little over 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks just for that one event, and then come home and be home for a week, 10 days, and then fly back, fish that event, go through that whole 10-day rotation, drive to the next event, fly home. So I'll be gone for 10, 12 days, come home for 10 days, or 2 weeks, whatever it is, and then fly back and do it all over again. So um,
And how many tournaments will you do that with?
this year I'll have 10 tournaments this year. So I'll be gone for, 100 plus days
Wow.
just for the fishing side. Then I'll do some shows. I work the Bassmaster Classic for sponsors, going to ICAST this next week. I'll do a few shows here and there in between. So, add on another, say, 20, 30 days for that. So I think it works out that I'm gone about 150 days a season, roughly, just for fishing. And that usually runs from about February until September, October. So from, late January, early February until October, I'll be gone 150 days.
Wow. And then when you get back after fishing a tournament and you got 10 days, well, I'll call it rest at home. You probably got 10 days of things that you have to do built up at home and you want to spend time with your family and stuff. What's the deal with like how much time are you putting into thinking about that? Are you doing research on the next tournament? On the internet? Are you looking at aerial photos? Are you looking at catch records? Are you doing any of that stuff? Or do you just try to spend time with family at that 10-day break?
I spend most of the time with my family for sure. I will research a few things here and there, but if it's a lake that I know, if it's a time of year that I know, I'll do less, internet research just because I've had the experience. Um, the one thing that I try not to do is get too dead set on what you learn on the internet with stuff because you look at tournament results or you look at past tournaments. You can watch a TV show from a tournament and it has, exactly what guys did there, how they did it, where they did it. It's never the same. You
Hmm.
can't ever go to that stuff. The other problem too is that out of the 80 guys I fish against, I bet you 60 or 70 of the guys watch the same show, so they know exactly what happened and where it happened, the same information you have. But it never goes down the exact same way. So I use it as kind of a base model of what to do on my practice out there, but I don't use it as the end all be all of what's going to happen there. So
Yeah.
fishing is so diverse, and 1, 2 weeks of different kind of seasonal weather or different kind of things that happen out there will change the way these fish act. And they're fish, they're not in the same places every time you go
Yeah.
there. You can't just go right to a spot and here they are. To me, it's what happened yesterday. It is not what's happening today, let alone a tournament that you're watching that happened 3 or 4 years ago in the same month. It changes completely. So you kind of have to really base everything off of the here and now. So
Yeah.
I try to get information. It's public information because we are not allowed to get any kind of information about a lake. Once they announce the schedule, I can't call you, Tom, and say, hey, I've never fished over here in Louisiana or Florida or whatever. What should I do? I can't do that.
Hmm.
I can look at public information on the internet, or watch a TV show, but I cannot call and get information.
Yeah. Do you think that that is respected rule?
Not a bit.
I was going to say, at your level, everybody kind of abides by the rules, but that seems like a really hard one, because somebody sees your truck out there, you stop to get something to eat, they're going to come up, hey man, you know where you should go is right by the dam. It's always awesome there. And
Yes.
you're like, yeah, I'm not supposed to listen to this. Like, you're
Yeah.
not soliciting that information, but it's being given to you.
Yeah,
And I would imagine that happens all the time.
it does. And it's like anything in life. I think that the people that play by the rules are the ones that are usually the ones that aren't doing well. And it's unfortunate. You'd like to think that people take things seriously, take the rules seriously, and they don't. I'd say as a whole, our group is pretty good about it, but we've got 5 really, really bad ones that not only is it just getting that random information, it's also searching out information, which is against the rules, and have failed polygraph tests. We get polygraphed at these events, and there's several guys that have failed many polygraphs, and guess what? They're still out there fishing. So
Wow.
it's unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah, that is unfortunate, because unfortunately there's money involved and a lot of ego, or maybe not ego. It's a very prestigious thing to be at the top of the bass fishing world. That's a really, really prestigious thing, and some people would probably do more for that prestige and reputation than they would even for the money that comes with it. Other people would do it just for the money, and they don't care anything about the prestige. So there's all kinds of different combinations there. But I always, like, when I look at a fishing tournament and the rules and things, I never understand why there are some rules that are immediately there's a gray area. Like why even have this?
Yeah.
Because 40% of the people aren't even going to pay attention to it. 40% of the people they think that they're abiding by it, but they're not. And 20% of the people are really trying to stay, within the rules of the tournament. But I always just kind of thought, man, it'd be better if it was just like, it'd be better for the tournament. It would be better for the anglers if you just made it more of a free for all, like the fewest amount of rules possible.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. I mean,
it's
different,
I
probably.
agree with that. I do, because the amount of people that are living in that gray area or getting away with stuff. I mean, we look at some of the guys that we have over there right now that, there's a handful of anglers that have failed numerous polygraph tests. Nothing is ever done. So all the leagues are doing are enabling those people that like to live in the gray area or live in the black area. It doesn't matter. They're in that area that is considered cheating, but they don't care because they got away with it multiple times. What's the point? What's the point of having those rules if they're not going to be enforced?
I know. Yeah, and if it's a really difficult rule to enforce, like certain ones are just really, really difficult to enforce, and why have them? I don't know. Then there's other things. Like, one of the things that I noticed, I guess there was a tournament or a couple of tournaments recently where they're fishing clear water for look like smallmouth, and they're using basically what we use in the Keys to look for lobster as a glass bottom bucket. And
flogger.
The flogger. And so I'm interested in your opinion of that, because it's like with the super high tech, everything's getting more and more and more and more and more high tech, and all of a sudden somebody gets an idea that the most low tech thing that may have ever existed is a super advantage, and I'm assuming that it's 100% legal and you can absolutely use it. And then somebody even came up with a product like the flogger would be, they should sell some in Florida, because that's how you literally just use a glass bottom bucket and look for lobster in the same way. And so what's the thought about the flogger? Because this year, and I'm a bass fishing fan, but I'm not like, I'm kind of a casual fan. I like it. I respect it. I respect the guys that do it. I think it's a really tough way to make a living, and the guys that do really well at it obviously work really, really hard at it. But then when I see something like that, I'm like, oh, that's new. Hadn't seen
Yeah.
that. Maybe it's been around for years. I don't know. But what's your opinion on that?
It has been around for a while. To me, it's more specific to smallmouth and spawning.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it truly shines. I have one. I bought one. I felt like I needed it. I have used it. We had a tournament at the St. Lawrence River a couple years ago that it's current. The smallmouth spawn deep. What I used it for is if you see a light spot, or let's say you found a fish in practice, you have a waypoint there. I use it to where I would lean over. I mean, think about doing, you know, 200 burpees while you are fishing. You lean over the deck, you take that flogger, you put it in the water, you're laying on the front deck of the boat, you're looking through this thing. I see that smallmouth on that light spot. I stand up, I set it off to the side, and then I cast repeatedly towards that light spot and try and catch it. I know a lot of the guys actually will physically have a rod in their hand, be holding the flogger in the other, and they're looking in the water and they're fishing like this, and they see the fish bite and they set the hook like this. They let go of the flogger, they stand up and they reel that fish in.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do it that way. I like to look at them, stand up, and I make that cast. What do I think about it? I think it's very specific and it's a very small window. It's not something that you're going to just put that in your hand and go out and all of a sudden catch more fish. It's very specific to smallmouth and spawning because they spawn a little bit deeper sometimes. They are not scared. When they get on a bed, they will just sit there. You can get right on
Right.
top of them. They don't care. You can actually catch them multiple times as well because they're just one of those fish that will just, they're so aggressive. They're like a junkyard dog. They will
Yeah.
just sit there and they will attack anything that gets there. So it's very specific. It's such a small little window where it works. If guys want to use it, I'm fine with it. I don't care. You can go out there and catch them different ways. You can do it the way I do it, or you can just look with your eyeballs and see them and catch them that way
Yeah.
too. So
I mean, I think that it would be funny if that became illegal because it's like the most basic, primitive kind of first technology that probably ever exists. That's the first fish finder,
I
right? Like
know,
that's the
I
first
know.
one. And it would be funny to see people get up in arms and say, "No, no, 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 you can't do that." Like that should be illegal. I just find that kind of funny because it's just so primitive compared to,
Yeah,
you got $20,000 worth of electronics right in front of you, and that's fine. But
yeah,
you can't
yeah.
look in the water for a fish. I didn't know how anybody felt about it, but that when I first saw that, I was like, man, that is pretty good. And really the electronics today with the the active target and all the different ones that are animated and you
Yeah.
can see the fish swimming around. I mean, damn, it's almost like looking in the flogger. It really is.
It is. It is. I use Garmin and their Panoptics is so good. I don't see how we ever fished without it. And that's forward-facing sonar, seeing not only just seeing the fish, just seeing that structure that you're casting to.
Mm-hmm.
You're just so much more efficient on the water. And I mean, I've had
Yeah.
several tournaments. I have probably 1, 2 tournaments a year where every fish I catch during that tournament, I saw them out there 50 to 80
Every
feet
single
away
fish.
and cast to them and catch them. And that's
Now,
two
what would
tournaments a
you
year.
when you think about that and you did that two tournaments? What would you have done? I mean, obviously you'd fished those same lakes before you had this technology, and how has the fishing or your strategy changed now that you have that and you're using it so much? And you think back to when you didn't have it and how you were fishing that same lake. What's changed? Do you use different lures? Do you use different tactics? Do you just have more confidence that the fish are there, or what has changed? Because you caught fish before you had it,
Yeah.
but now you're
You're
catching
just so
every
much
fish
more.
because you have it.
Yeah. You're just so much more efficient now. You can pull up on a spot and in the past you fish a waypoint. You mark a waypoint. That's where you had those bites. That's where you think that school of fish is. You'll fish and fish. Well, they don't bite. You'll leave and go somewhere else and maybe come back and you'll make those same casts and they don't bite. You'll leave and come back again. One time you show up, they are in the exact same spot where you found them. Now, when you pull up, they're not there and you start looking around, you'll find out they were only 30, 40 yards away, or they were 30 or 40 yards that way. They were a little bit farther away, and you can find the fish, catch those fish. Or you show up, and I've had it so specific that you do not cast until you see that fish. So now I'm actively looking for 1, 2, or 3 fish that I can cast to, whereas before you're just blindly casting. And we've caught them, and you will catch them. You're just more efficient at it now, where you can see that actual fish and cast to them. And
Right.
you save time, you catch more fish. Like I said, you're just
You can
way more
also
efficient
pretty
now.
much see like the size of the fish that you're looking for, right? Like, I mean, we're in Florida, we're using this thing, the same technology for, catching bait, where we're looking at mullet, we're looking at pilchards, we're looking at all kinds of bait fish. We're seeing permit or tarpon or jack crevalles or snappers, and they're all varying sizes, and we can even make out, well, that's a tarpon right there. You can see it. Now, a tarpon's one of the easiest fish probably in the world to mark on this type of technology and see what it is, because there's only going to be, I mean, even but sharks, you can see the difference between a shark and a tarpon. And you can see the difference between a permit and a jack crevalle. And you can, and those are hard fish to tell the difference. But if you're close enough and you're getting a really good mark on it, you're really reading it well, you can see the difference between these different fish. And you can be like, well, before we were looking at the sonar and there's like a bunch of ropey lines on there, and you're thinking, well, that looks like, what I'm looking for, and you fish there for a while. Maybe you catch what you're looking for, and then that goes into your mind. Okay, well, that's the mark I'm looking for. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. There could have been a lot of other stuff there, and you just ended up catching a tarpon. But in your world, do you pull up to places and be like, well, there just seems to be just a lot of little fish here? Are you getting that good with the electronics?
Not really. Every once in a while, I can tell if a fish is a little bit bigger, but I can't go, well, I can't look at a school of fish out there or look at a couple fish and go, well, I'm not going to cast that. That's only a 2-pound fish. I can't do that. I look at the marks, I throw to the marks, and I hopefully catch them. Every once in a while, I feel like one is a little bit bigger than another, but it'd be an individual one. I'll just look at one and go, that was a really big fish. And it's almost always the one that doesn't bite. They follow your bait and they act like they're going to bite, but they don't bite. And I go, man, that was a big one. It's the same thing where you throw out and you get a bite and you set the hook and your line breaks. You go, man, that was a big one.
It's the biggest one ever.
I've had that happen and go, man, that was a really big one. You'll be sitting there retying, you hear something, there's a little, 12-inch out there jumping, trying to throw your hook.
Yeah.
So I can't tell the size on them. Every once in a while, I can look at a group of fish, and the way that they're stacked up or the way that they look, they'll be too bright, or they'll be too big, or there'll be something about them that to me, I go, I don't think that's bass. And a lot of times it's a school of catfish or a school of carp. It's different types of fish. Every once in a while I can tell that, but even then, I see fish, I cast them, and if they don't chase it, if they don't follow it, they don't do anything, then that's when I go, yeah, I don't think those are bass.
Yeah.
But
we had an
I'm not good enough
experience.
to say, I know this. Oh, that's a 3-pounder, that's a 5-pounder. I need to catch that fish. I can't do that. No.
Yeah, well, maybe you can't do it because the technology is not good enough yet, but I bet it will be. I bet it'll continue to improve, and I bet you'll be able to count the rays on the dorsal fin, it's really incredible when you get a really good mark on a tarpon. It's like, whoa, that
They
looks like,
probably really shine,
like a
right?
picture.
I mean,
Yeah,
real
I mean, you can
bright.
see the scales. You can see how you can see like a scale pattern a little bit, and you can see a forked tail, and you can see, like you could see the difference between a barracuda and a tarpon 100% for sure, even if they were the same size, because the barracuda tail is going to be kind of squared off, and the tarpon tail is going to be very boomerang shaped on the mark and stuff like that. So, and also it's the perfect situation because we can actually. And a lot of times we can clearly see a dark spot out there in a place where we always catch tarpon. That's exactly what they look like. We know they're tarpon. You can't see them like individual fish, but that's a school of tarpon. So you put it forward and you look at it, and sure enough, it's 50. And sometimes I'm more surprised at how few there are or how many there are when I can clearly see them with my eyes, but it's just kind of a faint darkness out there. And you're thinking, well, that looks like there's 20. And then you you scan them and it's like 6. Like, okay, well, I am a fisherman, so I exaggerate like crazy. You know what I mean? All this talk about technology, one of the interesting questions I've asked a bunch of people, and it's cool to hear the different answers. What do you think that the technology, and it could be anything, electronics, boat technology, anything. What do you think the technology that has changed your fishing the most? Not just fishing, or maybe just fishing in particular, bass fishing or any kind of fishing. I've gotten so many different kind of answers on this. Is there a technology that you think of that was just really, truly revolutionary?
There's several things, and they kind of come in waves. I remember I was at a tournament on the West Coast, and a guy shows up, and there's this, rocket launcher looking thing off the back of his boat.
Mm-hmm.
I go, "What is that thing?" And he goes, "That's a shallow water anchor. It's called a power pole." I'm like, "Well, what is that?" And he goes, "Watch." And he goes and he hits a button, and it extends out, and the spike goes in. And he goes, "So I can anchor in shallow water with a button." And I'm like, "What?" And he had one of them, and then you start seeing everybody running around with the one power pole. And the next thing you know, everyone's got two, because if you have one, you're only a pivot point where that boat's going to
Yep.
do this. Well, you have two, you're locked into place. So power pole changed the industry with a shallow water anchor. And, to me, that was a huge advantage in fishing. Now granted, it's shallow water fishing. You have to be in that less than 8 foot of water for those things to reach down and just stick on the bottom. They make bigger ones, taller ones you can do. I run 8-foot blades, and if you're in less than 8 feet of water, I can stick in place. I have the two, and to me, it's mandatory to have that. So to me, power pole had a huge advancement in that shallow water anchor market. Then Garmin came out with their Panoptics. I think when it first came out, they called it something different. I wasn't using their products back then, but
Hmm.
I can't imagine not having Panoptics right now and seeing, what I'm seeing out there. I mean, just the efficiency you have of seeing targets to cast to, whether it's structure, whether it's grass edges. Grass comes out to a point, you can see that point, you can make your cast specific to that spot, and then physically seeing the fish out there as well. So those two things to me were a huge advancement in fishing.
Yeah.
4-stroke, Mercury came out with their Pro XS, the 4-stroke. That was a big deal. For a guy like me traveling across the country, I had to put 15, 20 gallons of oil in my truck that I had to stock through the season. And then I would re-up during the season, because every tournament you'd be putting 1-2 gallons of oil into that reservoir for that,
Yeah.
that 2-stroke engine. And
Even before that, you're mixing.
mixing, and see, I wasn't doing that back in the day. I never had to
Yeah.
mix the oil with the gas. I got into it later in the game, but I mean, I can't imagine doing that. I mean, just think about that advancement going to, you mean I just pour the oil into a reservoir now? That's
Right.
great.
Yeah.
And then
You pour. I mean,
now,
that was a big deal. Like oil injected motors.
yeah,
And you got the perfect blend,
oh
because
yeah,
you would always have a heavy pour. You didn't get enough gas in there or whatever, and it was running a little lean or it's running a little rich,
yeah, it
and
ran too
and
lean and you blew
smoking
it
a
up.
little bit. Yeah, but that was a big advantage, just the oil injection. And now the four
Yeah,
stroke is
yeah,
is ridiculous. I mean,
yeah.
that's
And think
that's
about
so
that.
much nicer.
That's where I met you, is when we ran to Lake X with Mercury,
That's right.
and they didn't tell us why we were there. We all kind of had an idea of why we were there, but we all hopped in buses and we went out to Lake X, and we walk out to the water, and they basically pulled a boat out of a garage that was on the water there and said, "Here we go. Here's our 4-stroke Pro XS." So
It was
um,
incredible too.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, it was really cool to see that.
and then they've
So
gone even further. I did another event like that, and same type deal, for these the V10s now and the
yeah,
V12, and it's
yeah.
just, I don't know. That's an incredible engine. That's absolutely an incredible engine.
Now, what are
Um,
you running on your saltwater stuff?
well, we run a lot of different things because we have a 16-foot skiff. And so we're running 115 horsepower
Okay.
there. And then we have 24-foot bay boats, and we'll either run a 350 or a 400. And the V10 is what we want to run,
Yeah,
but we don't have it yet.
yeah,
So, that's coming, but I'll
Yeah.
run any sort of Verado on there that's available,
Yeah.
and super happy with it. And then on the bigger boats, either twin 400s, same thing like that.
Hmm.
Right now we don't have a 36, but at some point we will have sometimes we'll have a triple engine boat. But
Yeah.
we've pretty much on our show we go with the 26-foot yellowfin, and
Okay.
honestly the way that Mercury pushes that boat, we feel very confident on a single engine, and
Yeah.
most people prefer a twin, but
Yeah.
with the weight that you save, we actually run faster than twin
Oh,
engine boat. I
interesting.
mean, now maybe if they were really pushing it, but we had a camera boat that had twins, and we had actually had twin Yamahas, and we had single Mercury, and man, just dusted them.
Wow, that's awesome.
They couldn't keep up. We kept turning around like, what is going on?
Where are they?
Why are y'all slowing down so much? They're like, dude, we're giving it everything we got. Like,
Yeah.
we're trying to keep up here. But they, to their credit, and to be fair, they had a couple of camera guys in there, so a little heavier probably.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
those camera guys, they bring all that food, all the drinks. There's amazing amount of weight that goes along with all the cameras and the snacks that these guys eat all day long. I don't know if they do that. I don't know if they do that on the bass, because they can't stop rolling. But when the same guys come and work for us, they're like, man, this is awesome. We can just eat a sandwich whenever we want to. You guys barely catch anything all day. You don't, hardly even fish. We know when you're going to cast, because you're like, oh, there's one.
There's
And
one.
then so
Yeah.
we pick it up and start rolling, and we never miss anything. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. That's
But for
funny.
you guys, they have to roll all day, man,
They
because
do.
anything could happen.
Oh man, those camera guys, how they do it is beyond me. They've got that big camera on their shoulder from start to finish. Man, I don't know how they do it.
They never stop. I mean,
Never stop.
that's why the bass camera guys are a good find for us. If you've got experience with that, we're interested, because those guys have a work ethic like. I mean,
Oh, they're
they
animals.
will go, man,
Yeah,
and they'll
they're
take
animals for
any
sure.
kind of boat ride. I'm like, listen, you take the nicest, easiest bass boat ride that you've ever had, and this is going to be way better. Like, we have nicer, bigger boats and we're not in a hurry, and we're
Yeah.
not going to try to break anything. So
Yeah.
they like going. They usually like going with us. Some of the answers I've gotten on the technology that really changed fishing for somebody. One guy, one of the best guides in the Keys, he said chemically sharpened hooks. I thought that was a
Interesting.
really
Yeah.
interesting answer, because he was like, man, we used to just sharpen these hooks, and I remember that we used to sharpen hooks, and
Yeah.
then chemically
A brand new hook.
sharpened
You pull a
hooks,
brand new hook out.
brand new, and it wasn't, it
Yeah.
was kind of sharp, and you'd give it a little, especially fishing for tarpon and stuff like that. And now to pull something right out of your tackle box, even that's been sitting there for months
Hmm.
in the salt water and everything, and it's still like just so sharp. That did make a big difference. And then the hook technology got, better. The steel seemed to get better. The hooks not only were sharper, but they were thinner in diameter.
Yep.
All that makes a big difference, and those are things that, I don't know, when I was looking for that answer, that's not what I expected. And then he went on and on about like how much it had changed his fishing, and how he rarely
Yeah.
misses a fish anymore. He used to miss them all the time, and it was the hook.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that. That was, when you asked that question, I wasn't really thinking of something as simple as a hook like that. And
Yeah, but you're right
maybe
though with
because
the
of,
power pole. That was
yeah.
born right in our world. And John Oliverio, he was fishing the redfish tournaments with us, and
Yeah.
he'd have these prototypes on the back of his boat, and they were little. I mean, they were very small at the
Yeah.
time. They were really small. But man, the thing about those products is that you can take. Even I am not a great mechanic, but I can take that whole thing apart and put it back together. They can coach me through it on the phone at
Hmm.
10 o'clock at night with a flashlight in my teeth, and I can get that thing ready and working. And I've only had to do that one time. I mean, it's not like they
Wow.
break down all the time, but if they do
Yeah.
break down, you can replace any part of it. It's amazing. And I think that he wanted that from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Make it easy.
That's
Um,
great.
what before we run out of time? How many miles do you think you put on your truck a year?
Surprisingly, I don't put as many on my truck as the guys do that live back east because,
Oh,
they'll run. Think about it. If a guy lives in Tennessee and he has a tournament in Florida, he'll drive from Tennessee to Florida, and
Mm-hmm.
then from Florida back to Tennessee, and then the next event might be in North Carolina. So he'll go from Tennessee to North Carolina, back to Tennessee, and then Tennessee to Alabama, back. So they're doing that back and forth. For me, it's just one to the next, to the next, to the next. So really, I'm only doing about 20,000 to 25 a year. It's pretty
Hmm.
rare for me to get up to 25,000 a year. But I would say I'm probably around that 20,000 mark a
Hmm.
year is
Yeah,
about what I'm doing.
that's not bad at all. I know a fishing guide in Florida that puts 100,000 on his truck, and he stays right in the state of Florida, but he
Just in the
fishes all
city.
over the place. I mean, he's just
Wow.
all over the place all the time. He's South Florida, North Florida, East Coast, West Coast, all the time, constantly.
Wow.
Puts almost
That's crazy.
100,000 miles on his truck.
That's a
But I was
lot.
going to ask you about the trailer bearings because, you know, have you ever had problems coming across the country? Never
I
have.
have never had a problem with my trailer bearings.
What's the
I
secret
think
to
that
that?
now, well, I think now they're so much better.
They are.
You know, I started travel when I started traveling fishing cross country. Um, I was in a Ranger boat. Ranger builds their own trailers. At the time they were building their own trailers right there in Flippin, and I never had an issue. Now, I also never had a boat where you had to add grease to the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
to the bearings. It used to be in the past where people would
Mm-hmm.
every trip they grease the bearings. I didn't have to do that. I have always run that enclosed bearing that Ranger puts on their axles, and
Never had a
I've been doing
problem.
this since '05 was the first season that I started fishing back east. I have yet to have a bearing problem.
Well, you
I
probably
hate to
won't.
even say that. I've not
No,
had it happen
you
once.
honestly you probably won't. Uh, I mean, it probably would have happened a long time ago. But you're right. That's another innovation that
Mm.
has made a huge difference. Is
Yeah.
the trailer bearings? I mean, I on the trailer that we have, you don't even have to check them for 3 years. Like
Wow.
you don't even
And
have
you
to
know what
do
else
anything.
helps? What helps us too is that we're only launching in freshwater. So I'm
Yes,
assuming if when you're launching in saltwater, it's got to be a little bit more
it probably
of
is,
a
but
hassle.
water's water. I mean, when I first started guiding, what it was for trout out in the Rocky Mountains, and man, you had to change the bearings every summer before you got started, and
Wow.
at the end of the year, you either changed them right at the end of the year, or you knew you were going to change them first thing, before you got them back on the road, and you got
Wow.
water in there, and it was just water was water, and
Yeah.
I mean, salt water's definitely worse,
Yeah.
definitely worse, but fresh water's not fun too. So let's talk about your diet real quick. What are you doing special for your diet?
For me, and really it came from listening to Joe Rogan. He had a guy, Paul Saladino, on.
Mm-hmm.
A couple guys on there about the carnivore diet. And, what happened to me, so I'm a big mountain biker, and um, well, let's go back to like my normal routine during a season. During my off season, I would always diet exercise. I'd go to the gym, 5, 6 days a week to get back into shape. And then the season would start, and I would work the entire season getting out of shape. And then the off season, I try to get back into shape. And I constantly had this rotation of just getting in shape, getting out of shape, getting in shape, getting out of shape. And at the end of a season, this was back 2 years ago, I was at a tournament. I crashed on my mountain bike. I would take a mountain bike with me. I'd ride at every stop. And it was the very last tournament of the year. I rode, I crashed, and I jacked myself up. I broke
Mm.
some ribs, I collapsed my lung, and had like this hip problem. And that was in October. So I was out for like 10 weeks. I mean, I was on the
Wow.
sofa for 10 weeks, and I just turned into a slob. And the season started, and here we are. I didn't have that off season to get back into shape. So I started the season in a bad spot, meaning that I wasn't exercising. It was not a good place. So uh, that next season in May, I finally go, man, I'm going to jump on this carnivore thing, and I did it, and I mean, it changed my life. So I told myself I was going to do it for a month. I was full carnivore for a month, and then after that, I started doing meat based. So I basically eat meat and fruit, and that's it. I'll do honey. I'll do honey and coffee, or I'll do honey. I like it's actually really good. And this is something that Paul Saladino did is he puts honey on his steaks. So I'll pull a ribeye off the grill, I'll put butter on it, and I'll put honey on it, and man, it is delicious. So right now I'm meat based, so I eat fruit and I eat meat, and really that's it. That's all I
So
eat. So I haven't
if
had.
you've stuck with that for a while, there's obviously been some positive results from that. What do you feel like when
Uh,
you're eating that way?
Man, it's nuts. I lost about 20 to 25 pounds, and my energy level has gone just skyrocketed. Now it is kind of normalized now. So I was only going to do it for a month, and I felt so good at the end of the month. I go, I'm going to do it for another month. Well, I'm about 13, 14 months in now. So I've been doing it for over a year
Wow.
just because I felt so good on it. I didn't want to stop. So think about 13 months. I haven't had a piece of bread. I haven't had any sugar. Granted, I have honey. It's a different kind of sugar. Same thing with fruit. It's a different kind of sugar than a refined sugar when you're eating fruit. So um, I just feel so much better. My energy level is way up, and I like what it's done to my body as well. I mean, I lost a bunch of weight, and that's a big deal. When I was eating like a slob and I wasn't exercising, and start exercising, eating like that, it makes a huge difference. Your joint pain goes away. I used to have elbow pain. I had wrist pain. I felt like I was getting arthritis in my fingers as well, just from that repetitive movement,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all gone away. And
Wow.
that was one thing. I wanted to lose a little bit of weight. I wanted my joint pain to go away. And when you start eating like that, you eat that meat-based diet, you start decreasing inflammation in your body, and those pains start going away. And I have several friends that I've told about it, and they start doing it, and instantly it takes a good 10 days, 2 weeks of just having a meat based only, not even eating fruit or anything, just straight carnivore for 2 weeks, and their pains will go away after about 10 days, 2 weeks.
Wow.
And
And
same
so
thing. I have friends that they go, well, I'll do it for a month, and they've been doing it for several months now, and they're like, I just feel so good. My inflammation is down. I've lost weight. I don't have back pain anymore. I don't have shoulder pain. Whatever it is, when you decrease that inflammation, those pains start going away.
sure, I've been seeing you getting in the ice bath too. That
Yeah,
helps.
yeah, that
That
too.
helps a lot. I mean, it really does. It really does help a lot. Do you find it's easier to stay on the carnivore or meat base like you're talking about when you're at home or on the road?
It's actually easier on the road for
Yeah.
me. When you're so busy, it helps. When I'm at home and I'm walking around the house, like I'm hungry, and it's harder to kind of stay on that. But when you meal prep, it's great. I'll cook, a couple steaks, I'll cook a bunch of hamburger, and then I can eat off of that if I can't cook. So it's so easy to just cook that stuff, put it in a container, put it in the fridge. When you get hungry, you want a snack, you pull it out. It's not a calorie restricted diet. So if I'm hungry, I eat. And what's
Yeah.
interesting is I noticed I've actually start eating less food because you're satiated more now when you're eating the right stuff. When you're eating the wrong things, it actually increases your
Sure
appetite.
it does.
Diet drinks and
Yeah.
sugar, everything, it makes you eat more than what you normally do. So I feel like I'm eating less now.
That's like
And
the protein test some people say is like if you're really hungry, could you eat like a steak right now?
yeah,
I mean, and most people are like, no, I want some chips, I want
yeah,
this or I want that, and it's like, well, you can have anything, straight protein that you want. I'm
yeah,
really not that hungry,
yeah.
and you're not really that hungry. You're just not that hungry. It's a funny thing. So when you're doing that, like, and you're on the road, you're practicing for a tournament, or you're actually getting ready for a tournament. What are you taking on the boat? Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, snacks, everything. What do you take on the boat? Because this is a big question that when people are watching their diet, they're like, "Yeah, I'm doing great right up until the time I go fishing, and then everybody gets a pub sub, and that's all that's on the boat, and then I I fall off the wagon." So a lot of people ask like, "What do I take on the boat?" And I find those pre hard boiled eggs like
Yeah.
at Publix, and I'll just take that bag. You get 6 eggs right there, and so I'll do that if I don't cook steak or whatever. But I'm interested
Yeah.
to know what you're bringing on the boat. For a tournament day, or tournament day might not be a good example. I don't know. Do you eat much on tournament day?
I do a little bit, but I eat less on a tournament day than I do during practice. But yeah, when you're on the clock, I end up eating less. But it's basic. It's very simple for me. And man, I can't stress how important it is to eat this way for people. And it's very easy to do. People say it's so hard to do. It's not. It's so easy. Um, what I'll do is I'll cook. So let's say a typical practice day for me, which is where I'm going to eat more. Um, I will start off in the morning. I have coffee, but I put butter in it, and I shake it up in one of those protein shakers.
Mm-hmm.
So I have butter coffee. So you're getting fat, and I'm getting the energy from the caffeine. But then I'll intermittent fast. So I won't eat until probably anywhere between 10 in the morning or noon. But having that, I'll do 2 tablespoons of butter in coffee. It's actually pretty good. It sounds
Mm-hmm.
gross, but it's
No,
actually
it's
pretty good.
good. I've been drinking that for a
Um,
long time.
yeah, it's great. So I'll start with that, and then the day before I'll cook up 2 pounds of ground beef, and I'll cook up maybe 2 ribeyes, and I'll eat off of that for 2 days. So I'll take a probably a pound of ground beef, and after I cook it, I put butter and I put a bunch of salt in there, and then a little bit of honey just to get some glucose in there, get some of that, some carbs in there, a little bit of sugars to give me a little bit more energy. And I'll have that, the ground beef, and then I'll have some cut up ribeye that I'll have in there. So that's all I'll eat that day is that ribeye and ground beef, and then I'll have a little container of fruit where I'll do blueberries and an apple. So that day I'll have the butter coffee in the morning, which I'll fast and won't eat until about noon, and then about 4 times that day from noon until let's say 7 or 8 o'clock at night. 7 o'clock, I try not to eat too late. I'll eat off of that ground beef and ribeye and fruit, and that's all I'll have for that day.
Hmm.
And it just there's zero inflammation in there. The fruit's not going to inflame your body. The meat's not going to inflame your body. I'm getting the fat from the meat. I also have butter in there to give me some of the fat as well, and I have a little bit of that sugar in there, from the honey, and that's all I eat.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because there is something called glucogenesis, I think, where you can actually your body can make carbohydrates out of protein. Like as you have too
Yes.
much protein to digest, it will convert that into glucose, and I think it's called glucogenesis. Um,
I just read about that about a day or two ago. That's funny that you
yeah,
say
it's
that.
fascinating, really, because I mean, there's lots of people in the world that don't eat much carbohydrates at all. I mean, they're
Hmm.
mostly meat,
Yeah.
and you know, did have you like a lot of people that might not be familiar with that diet plan or whatever? Wow, that's exactly what my doctor has always told me not to eat. Have you done
Yeah.
any blood work since you've done this, or like what does that look like for you?
So yeah, and it's funny. My mom said the same thing. My mom's a vegetarian. And she freaked out when I told her what I was doing. I mean, like literally, it was like, oh, she just her reaction. It was hilarious seeing that. She was just like, oh, she thought I was gonna die. And she was so freaked out about my blood work, and so I have actually done. I did my blood work 2 weeks into doing this, and since then I've done it. I want to say 4 more times. So I've done 5 blood works in the last year, which I mean I don't think I've ever done it prior to that. So
Mm-hmm.
I have been doing my blood work. My cholesterol has gone down. My body fat has gone down. I actually did a artery test to see if I had any buildup in my artery, and the guy told me, he goes, my cholesterol is still high, but that's just the way my family is. We run high, but I've gotten my cholesterol down almost 100 points, which is a
Wow,
lot when you're talking about cholesterol. And I
wow,
eat red meat, and I eat butter, and I eat eggs every day, and my cholesterol has gone down. When it's
yeah,
bad for you is when you have that mixed diet, when you're eating refined sugars, when you're eating carbs from breads and different things. That's where cholesterol is bad. If you're not exercising, that's where cholesterol is bad. But when you're eating a really clean diet like that, it's different. So my cholesterol has actually gone down. And like I said, I eat butter all the time. I eat red meat every single day. And my
Mm-hmm.
cholesterol, my arteries, they did a scan on my arteries, and um, the doctor basically told me that there's no measurable buildup in my arteries. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that was before. I don't know if it has gone down, but it is, my arteries are not, my cholesterol's high, but my arteries are not. Um, I don't have any plaque buildup or anything in my
Right.
arteries. So
That's not surprising. I do blood work twice a year, and I have probably for the last 10 years. And over the different years, I can look back and see the different diets that I was doing. Occasionally, I felt like, maybe I'm running a ton, and you're going to follow more of a running based diet where it's a higher carb diet, whatever. That's when my blood work was the worst. And when my blood
interesting.
work was the best is when it's either straight paleo
Yeah.
or low carb, high meat. And
Yeah.
like you, I eat red meat every day. If not every day, 5 days a week.
Yeah.
I mean, because I like fish too. I mean, I like to eat fish that we catch,
Hmm.
and so if I'm not eating red meat, I'm trying to eat fish,
Yeah.
and but a chicken slips in there every now and then.
Yeah. For
But
sure.
a chicken's got great protein for the fat. Like if you're trying to do something and you are watching some of the fat intake, and you're like you're not, obviously not calorie restricted, not fat restricted, but
Hmm.
carbohydrate restricted.
Yeah. For sure.
And so you really need all the calories that you can get from fat as well, because of your activity level and everything else,
Hmm.
and really almost like a keto thing. Like, have do you like Mark's Daily Apple? Mark Sisson, do you know him?
I don't know.
You should maybe check him out. He's a California guy too, but he was a Ironman triathlete, and he was one of the first people to kind of advocate for a meat-based diet or a keto diet for high-level endurance athletes. And he's been on
Interesting.
Joe Rogan a bunch of times. A couple times anyway, and he's a very good interview. He does a really good podcast, and he believes that that is the key to unlock all of the next group of world records in
Interesting.
all endurance events, because
Wow.
he's like, we've taken the training to the level that there's not going to be anything measurably different about the way that we're training these athletes. We've tried every possible approach to get to
Hmm.
where we are today. The only remaining thing is either anabolic steroids or going that route, or
Yeah.
is there a diet that we could change? And he's like, if you can get people fat adapted, and you can get endurance athletes to buy into that, and you
Yeah.
already have the high level training and the obvious genetics that go with an elite performer. He's like, that's how you're gonna run a sub 2 hour marathon. That's how you're gonna
Interesting.
see these uh, benchmark times that have never been beat. He's like, that's going to be the wave of the future. Is that when? Or that's what he thinks anyway.
That's the next
And it's
step.
interesting to think about. But for your own purpose and for the purpose of the audience, better mental clarity, better energy, weight loss, good blood work
Yeah.
seems like something that somebody might want to try. I don't know if you've tried a bunch of things, but
I mean, I can't recommend it enough. I mean, like I said, it's changed my life. I was going to do it for a month, and here I am, over a year later, still doing it, and
so when you're
just a
doing
really
that,
real.
and then I watch your Instagram and stuff, and even this morning you said that you just finished Murph this morning. That's a 1 mile run, 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 squats, another 1 mile run. You need some energy for that. So do you feel like you did the diet, you got more energy, and it made you want to work out more? Or where did the increased exercise come in the process here? Where did it make you feel better, so then you exercised, or did you exercise more and that made you want to get the diet tighter, or was it a combination of any of those?
It was a combination of both. That's a great question. It's most people tend to kind of diet and exercise at the same time, and I was still riding my bike a lot prior to starting this, and I still started doing that. But what I did mix in with this diet about the same time as my daily push-ups. as well as weight training instead of just doing cardio. Riding a bike is more a cardio workout. Weight training is so beneficial for your body. In fact, you lose more weight lifting weights than you do by doing the actual cardio. So I mixed it in at the same time, but people said that your energy level will go down by not having any carbs, which I kind of believe that's true, but at the same time, it didn't seem like it did a huge difference to me as far as not having carbs in my diet. My energy level was so strong that I just felt like, I'd be walking around the house and I just need to do something. I need to get out and jog for a little bit, or I need to do something. You started getting kind of antsy by not doing anything. So I think it was the combination of the both, wanting to exercise and then having that energy to do it. You can take anybody and they go, man, I really need to exercise, but I'm kind of tired.
Right.
You need that energy level to exercise. And the push-ups for me were a huge deal. I mean, that was something that I've always heard. I have a buddy out here that's a physical therapist, that he's a big weightlifting guy, competed for a long time. And he always said, man, do push-ups every day. And I never did it. And then when I started this, I started doing push-ups every day. And it was funny because I could do, I'd drop down, I'd do 30 push-ups on the first set. And then the next one I'd get to 25 and I'd struggle. And then the next one I'd get to 15. I couldn't even finish 15. And so now I do 5 sets of 40. That's what I do,
Nice.
basically every day. I've slacked a few times here and there where I'll go a day or two. If I have to get up at 5 and, be on a plane at 6, we'll skip that day. But, push-ups to me have just helped a ton. And it's a full body. It's not just chest. I mean, you're doing your shoulders, your back, you're doing your arms, you're doing everything. It's just a great way to kind of get your day started.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay, so 2 things. At iCast, I have morning workouts. I hope you'll come. We'll definitely do push-ups.
Okay.
So I'll text you where and when.
Okay.
And then we have the 10,000 push-up challenge every February. So yeah, let's do it, man. 10,000 push-ups. It's really 3. I mean, you're already at 200, so you add 130 a day or something like that to what you're currently doing, and you'd be surprised at. Like it's one of those things, like what we're talking about is like the diet helped you build momentum on the exercise or vice versa. And it's like you build this momentum and then you're like, well, shit, I did 300 yesterday. I'm going to do 500 today. Oh, I thought I'd be way more sore. Let's try 700. Let's try, whatever. And then it's like, okay, let's try to get this thing over as fast as possible. That's what I like to do. I like to get it over with as fast as possible, but I do enjoy it.
I was talking to my father-in-law yesterday. He's fit. He's in great shape. And I was telling him about your dad and about the push-up challenge. And because he was telling me, he goes, oh man, he goes, for a while there, a couple of years ago, I was doing 300 a day. And I go, you can see my buddy Tom's dad.
Yeah, man. He's 85. 85. He does a 10,000 push-up challenge every year. His push-ups are getting slightly shorter in range, but listen, man, he's 85, dude. I tell him, I'm like, listen, the best thing you're doing is at your age is getting on the ground and getting back up. The fact that you're doing push-ups, that's all gravy. But I mean, really, like there's a significant amount of research that says that your ability to get on the ground and get back up has a direct correlation to the length and quality of your life. And
I have heard that. And the other thing is grip strength.
Yeah,
that's
for
a big
sure.
part of it as well.
Did you read that book Outlive yet by Peter
I
Attia?
haven't, no.
Because he's all about that book. You'll love that, and you'll make it to about I don't know, maybe Kansas on that book from California. It's a long book, but Peter Attia, he's really really a great writer, very, very, very smart guy, and
that's where I heard the grip strength.
Yeah, exactly. He's got all this correlation between grip strength and length and quality of life, and then he has this thing he calls the Centenarian Olympics, like all of these things that if you want to be able to do these at 80 or 100 years old. And he kind of winds it back and is like, if you want to be able to play with your grandchildren and get down on the ground at 80 years old, at 40 years old, you need to be able to do 100 burpees in, 8 minutes or something like that. And so because you're going to start to lose as you get older, and so to be able to get down on the ground, and get back up at 80 well,
Yeah.
you have to be in much better shape than you are now. And
Oh,
it's a
yeah.
very interesting book. I really liked it. But I think we're running out of time here. I really enjoyed having you on, man. And I look forward to seeing you at ICAST. We'll be at the Mercury, at Power Pole, at Daiwa. I don't know. We probably have other sponsors in common, but I'd love to have you come to the workout. It happens early in the morning, right across the street from the convention center, usually. And you'll be staying at one of the hotels right there.
Yep. I'll be staying at
Okay,
the
cool.
Rosen
All right.
Center.
Well, I'll text you where we're gonna meet, and hopefully you can come one day, or all of
Oh
them.
man, I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, Brent. Thanks, man. And if people want to follow you, see you how you're doing on the tour, go to your website, go to social media. What do they do?
Yeah, Instagram and Facebook. I'm more active on those. It's just Brent Ehrler Fishing. Last name is Ehrler Fishing. So Brent Ehrler Fishing, and I post almost daily. So I try to keep up, and if anyone wants to reach out, I try to keep up with private messages as well. So if you have a question fishing related or anything, just shoot me a private message, and I'll try my best to respond.
You're gonna have more diet related questions.
Yeah,
After
diet,
this
exercise.
one. All right, Brent. We'll see you next week at ICAST. And
Great.
thanks again for coming on, man. It was great.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm glad we finally did this.
Yeah, thank you. All right, see ya.